Just gonna sip on my coffee. That is a good cup of coffee. And everything tastes better in a handmade mug. Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. It's been about 6 months since I started my pottery obsession. And here are most of the things that I've made. Hold on a second. Forgot about this little guy, a stripy jug. And this little planter, which I'll put right there. Let me tell you about how the journey has been so far. So 6 months ago, I happened to stumble upon a pottery studio in central Wellington. It's Karla Marie Ceramics. Let me show you a hidden gem in Wellington. It was on a Tuesday, and they just happened to have a wheel taster class that weekend, so I immediately signed up. In the class, we got to work with 2 500 grams ball of clay. The amazing Bella walked us through the whole process of throwing clay on a pottery wheel for the first ball, and then she guided us through for the second ball. I just completely fell in love with the messiness of clay. I love the feel of it on my fingers, the tactile, and all the shaping of it. It just feels so beautiful. The lovely people at Karla Marie Ceramic Studio then took care of the trimming and the bisque firing and the sanding, and the pieces were ready for us to glaze a couple of weeks later. I thought I made a masterpiece. So that was 500 grams of clay, and I felt like, wow, that was an amazing piece. When I look back on it now, I realize that, okay, maybe for a drinking vessel it is not so good because it slants this way and it's not the smoothest in terms of pulling, but also it's quite thick as well. But nevertheless, I love this little guy. After the taster class, I then signed up for the wheel level 1 throwing classes. That class was 7 weeks and we got to make 3 items and went through the whole process of throwing on the wheel, trimming, and then sanding the pieces after a bisque fire and then glazing it. So that one was also 500 grams of clay, and if you can see there in comparison, that one I managed to pull a bit bigger, or maybe there wasn't as much waste in that one compared to the very first one that I did. That was the first one I made at wheel level 1. And then there's this one that was slightly bigger and slightly more shaped. So the thing that I discovered about clay is that it does shrink a lot. So I had imagined that this would be a nice noodle bowl. But it doesn't work out that way. It's still a very nice bowl and I still use it in the kitchen and when I'm snacking. We also then threw something slightly bigger, which is this one. And of course I thought that one would also be quite a nice noodle bowl. And I want it to be nice and deep so that it holds all the broth in, all the soup in. But it could be a nice little small serving, but I've now actually used it more for having rice with things on top. Like this bowl here, which is the rice and chicken katsu on top. Still, love those pieces. What I've discovered about clay is that it is infinitely reusable. As long as it hasn't been bisque fired, you can always just smash the pieces that you make, turn it back into usable clay. And so I thought, I really need the reps. Like making 3 things over 7 weeks I felt wasn't enough for me to actually have that muscle memory. And so I thought, I'm going to dive in and I'm going to buy a wheel because I just wanted that repetition of throwing on the pottery wheel and I can just reclaim the clay. After looking around all the different types of wheel, I really wanted a tabletop pottery wheel because I have a small house and I don't really have a lot of space for a pottery wheel in my house. The Shimpo Aspire was perfect for it. So I went ahead and put an order for a Shimpo Aspire. It's a pottery wheel. Now, one day before the wheel was due to arrive, this happened in the kitchen. Well, here's one way to have to start a new collection of little bowls. It dropped from there and most of it broke. I think only that one and that one saved. So I guess I'll have to be making bowls then. Well, I thought that was one way to force myself to make more things. I decided that I was going to make bowls to replace the bowls that I broke. It was a whole stack of 6 or maybe 8 bowls. So these are other ones that I've made in the early days. And also this is me playing around with glaze as well. That one I definitely tried to make bigger than this one. You can see the size difference. That one is a good size for a small serving of noodles. This one is a shape that I liked, and I've made many cups of coffees in this one. It's nice to hold, it's a nice shape, it's a nice color. I love that combination of tenmoku on floating green. So then I went ahead and threw my little bowls. So these little bowls usually we use for ice cream or some for dessert. Those were the bowls that fell off the shelf. And so I made 6 of these. You can see that they're not exactly the same shape or the same size, but I guess that's the beauty of handmade stuff. And I love these. Then I've made a set of little ramekins. I wanted to practice throwing small, and I made these little ramekins because I wanted to make it for creme brulee. So I have 5 of these. I also really wanted to play around with stripy clay, with marbled clay, and so in one of my videos I walked through the whole process of how I made these little tumblers, and now we use these daily. It's a really good size. I really love the feel of it, and I love the one that you can see the stripiness of it. It's beautiful. After wheel level 1 finished, I signed up for level 2, where we made bigger items and practiced more with the trimming. With this bowl here, I wanted to have a nice tall foot ring, because when you're holding the bowl in your hand and you're eating your noodles, because of the tall foot ring, you can hold it like that, or you can hold like that, and it's not going to burn your finger because there's a lot of space between the bowl itself and your hand. And that's a good shape for a little small serving of noodles. Still not quite as big as what I imagine a ramen bowl, like one of the Japanese ramen bowls should be. But I'm still quite pleased with that. And here's another one that I made that wasn't quite a bowl, but not quite a plate either. But it does also still have a tall foot ring, and so that's still a nice bowl to serve things in. I tried at home throwing some ramen bowls, and these are some of the shapes that I made. I like that shape. It's quite tall, it's quite deep, it's quite conical, and so when you're eating your ramen, there's a lot of space on the top for all the toppings, and that's what I like. So the noodles can stay nice and warm underneath, and you have a lot of space for the topping on top. And so I have 2 of these ones. So one is more conical than the other. Still, I love that. This one I threw with a different clay. So this is one with a white clay. It's kind of the same as that one. Now the reason why I didn't glaze all of the outside is I read that this glaze drips, and I didn't want it to drip and stick to the kiln shelves. But even so, it actually didn't drip at all. I like the look of it. I like the feel of raw clay underneath the bowl. I don't know, it just feels nice compared to everything was just glossy. So those were my ramen bowls. What else? Okay, side plates. Okay, I wanted to make side plates, and these are the side plates that I made. So I have 6 of these, and being plates, they didn't actually fit in my glaze bucket, so I was trying to figure out how I would glaze the inside of it, or the whole thing of it, and I decided maybe I'll brush the glaze on it. My glaze wasn't a brushable glaze. It's an Abbott, and this one was done in haystack. So what I did is I took a brush and put this on the wheel and just brushed it as it was moving. Before it was fired, it looked like it was even, but when it came out of the fire, you can see kind of like strokes, brush strokes. And because I used a buff stoneware clay, it kind of looks like streaks of caramel, as one of my friends described it. That one you can probably see a bit more. But I decided that accident was quite a happy accident, because I feel like food looks really good on this. Here's a couple of pastries on the plate, and I just think it looks beautiful. With this one, I threw 4 of these, but 1 cracked. So I had 3, which is the 3 that you see in one of my videos of making tiramisu in these little bowls. So I made 3 tiramisus. I took 2 of them to a friend's dinner party, and I left it there for her as a Christmas present. So this is the one that I decided to keep. This is where I kind of experimented with doing esgrafito, which is a technique where you put a slip of colored clay and then you carve it out to reveal the pattern underneath it. As you can see, I'm getting a bit bigger from the very first one that I made. So I'm quite pleased about that one. And of course you can't quite do pottery without making mugs. And so I've made several mugs with different shapes. Like this one here is kind of like a curved one and a handle. Now the thing about handles, I'm not so good at attaching handles yet. So sometimes I just end up having my mugs just plain handleless mugs, like that one and that one. I'm still experimenting with all the different glazes, and that's why these, even though they're the same shape, they have different glaze colors on them. Here's another one with carving and painted on with underglaze and then dipped in a clear glaze. I made another one, but I've already given that to a friend, but here's a little video to show it. So then the other thing that I would need in my kitchen would be a mixing bowl. And so I went ahead and tried to throw big. Now I haven't thrown big before. This was, I believe this one was 1.5 kg of clay, and I made 2 of these. One is slightly bigger again, but the other one hasn't come out of the kiln at the Pottery Club. Still, this one I'm very pleased. It's a good size, it's a good shape. It could be a mixing bowl, or it could be a bowl for serving pasta in, which is what we did last night actually. Just showing you that. So I have one mixing bowl, and the other one is coming out of the kiln soon, I hope. So most of the stuff that I've showed you so far was actually made on the wheel. But of course, when you're doing pottery, you can't help but try other stuff. So I played around with making a mug. This is hand-built, slab building. I played around with just using some embossing things that I had when I was making cookies, actually. And I also kind of used a butterfly cookie cutter and attached it on the handle. I love this mug. I'm not too crazy about hand building. I feel like I actually prefer the wheel throwing instead. But one of my latest pieces that I made is this teapot. This is made hand building slabs. This is actually my second attempt. The first one, after I made it and it was drying in the studio, it just cracked down the middle, and I don't know why. The people at the studio don't know why. They said that the clay tends to crack. So I said, okay, I'll just put it in the reclaim bucket, and then I had a go at making another one. I'm very pleased with this one. This is kind of like probably one of my masterpieces in my 6-month pottery journey. Because after it was kind of leather hard, what I did is I kind of used a carving tool and carved like a tree pattern on it. So you can see on the other side as well. I was quite nervous when I was picking this up from the club because first of all, I was nervous that it might get knocked about and it might break. Because this one doesn't actually have a foot ring, I was worried that the glaze might actually stick onto the kiln shelf. I don't want to be that one person with a piece stuck to the shelf. But also, it actually does pour. So I'm very pleased with that. Now I made that slab building, but I made the mug to go with it on the wheel. So I actually threw this on the hump. Made 2 mugs, one with a handle. This one actually did have a handle too, except when it was bone dry and I was lifting off the drying shelf, I knocked it to the side and the handle just completely came off. So I just scraped it off, tidied it up, and now it's once again another handleless mug. But these 2 were actually glazed in exactly the same glaze, but maybe I didn't stir enough, or maybe this one was still a bit damp after I was sanding it down. I don't know. They turned out to be 2 different mugs. I still love them both. Inside of that you can see is still nice and blue. The glaze is called zinc blue. And if you look at that one, it has that pattern there. Because I was throwing this on the hump, I wanted to make other stuff with the clay that was still on the wheel, and so I decided to make little ramekins. That could be like a little sugar dish for when I'm making my pot of tea. So I have 3 of those. I do love them. And this one is an experiment once again with marbling clay. I I thought the dark colored would actually be black, but it turned out to be more like chocolate color. So this is kind of like more like a chocolate swirl. And I made it with a little spout so that it could be a little pourer, or it could be a little vase. I'm not too sure. I just like the shape of it. I like the little dainty spout there. Is there anything else that I haven't shown you? Oh yes, so I decided to also just give it a try to make these planters. This is a one-piece planter, and so there's like the planting bit over there, and there's a little plate to catch the water when you're watering the plant in there. And I also was just wanting to play around with different glazes, and if the glaze ran, then it would just still get caught in that little plate there. So I made 4 of these, different sizes, glazed them differently, but I already gave 2 away, and I just kept these 2. I was experimenting with brush-on glazes with this one because there's quite a lot of beautiful brush-on glazes. Now, those are most of the things that I made. The next things that I want to make are actually dinner plates, because I still have a stack of store-bought dinner plates. I want to replace all of that. Dinner plates are a bit bigger, a bit wider dinner plates. Still not too sure exactly how I want to do that. I have also made 6 pasta plates, except those are currently at the club for the glaze firing. So far, that's 6 months worth of playing with clay and just experimenting with different shapes, experimenting with different techniques, decoration techniques. I'm now signed up for wheel 3 at the studio. I'm very excited about learning new skills in the next lesson. I've watched quite a lot of pottery videos. Some of them are amazing, some of them are inspiring. I am yet still to come up with my own style, but I am so happy that I discovered pottery, and everything just, like I say, everything just tastes better when it's out of your own handmade crockery. Last night when we were having dinner, I was pleased to notice that everything we used to serve dinner on last night was all handmade. It's just beautiful. I'm still going to keep the very first piece that I made. It's a good reminder of where I was 6 months ago and where I currently am now. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.